When I was 14, my folks decided we needed a family bonding vacation, so off we went to this resort that was basically in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee. Imagine the most old-school, wooden, we love nature kind of vibe, and that's where we were. Everything was made of wood, right down to the toilet seats. This place was crawling with bugs that looked like they'd survived the dinosaur era, and everywhere you went, there was this lingering smell of cigarettes and despair. At that point, I felt too cool to hang out with my parents and sisters, who were 6 and 8 then. I tried to find kids closer to my age, but the place seemed filled with nothing but families with younger children. I was bracing myself for days of boredom. One afternoon, while playing ping pong with my sisters, this girl walked in who looked to be my age. She gave me a smile and a half wave, and I went up to her and introduced myself. Her name was Sadie. She was a year older than I was, and like me, wasn't exactly thrilled to be there. She had this cool, kinda goth style going on, which was pretty intriguing in a place that felt stuck in time. I ran into her again the next day as I passed by the pool. She waved me over and suggested we take a walk down by the river. As we talked, I realized she was a bit off. Her answers were vague, especially about what room she was in, and soon, our conversation took a dark turn into some really morbid topics. I won't get into it, but I started to think she had some issues. But hey, she was cute, and I was a teenage boy, so I could overlook a lot of stuff like that back then. Especially when she looked at me and asked, "Can we go to your room?" I lit up with excitement inside. I was a 14-year-old boy, hormones raging, so obviously I said yes, with a little too much enthusiasm in me, imagining the best-case scenario. As we got close to my room, she asked for the card to open the door, then ran ahead to open it. We sat on my bed for a few minutes. It was a bit awkward, because I didn't know how to make a move or if I should make a move. Then things started getting really weird. She began talking about seriously heavy stuff, hating her family, having no friends, and an unsettling fascination with blood. Then, out of nowhere, she pulls out this massive switchblade and starts talking about using it on herself or others. That's when the alarm bells really started ringing. When she asked if I wanted to use the knife on someone at the resort, I played it cool but was internally freaking out. I said we should go back outside and walk around. Thankfully, she agreed, so we left my room and wandered the resort grounds for a while. As we did, I watched how she looked at people passing by, staring them down, not caring when they would notice. Luckily, I saw my parents after a few minutes and made up some excuse to ditch her. All she said was, "Okay." I said, "See ya," and she just looked at me. I went to my family and stayed with them for the rest of the day, hoping to not run into that freaky girl again. But the real horror happened later that night. The resort had these connecting rooms. Mine was attached to my parents' and sister's rooms, but also had its own door to the hallway. I was trying to sleep when I heard the outer door open and close. I looked over to see that it was fully shut, but someone was standing in front of it. "Who is it?" I asked. A familiar girl's voice replied, "I want blood." I sat up, my body turning to ice as I remembered that I had never gotten my keycard back from Sadie. She planned this. She approached my bed in the dark with something in her left hand, holding it up. She repeated it. "I want blood." Then added, "Will you help me? Where will I get it from?" "You?" I've never screamed so loud in my life. She still stood there. She didn't charge at me. She didn't run. Only when my dad came flying in did she bolt before he could do anything. But it was enough for him to lay eyes on her. I yelled, "She was about to kill me!" He started to give chase, but I hollered, "Don't! She has a knife!" Everyone up and down the hall came out of their rooms to see what was happening. Right then and there, we went straight to the main office to get information on this Sadie girl. It turns out that no one named Sadie was staying at the resort, and no one had seen a girl matching her description. Hell, there were no girls even close to her age staying there at that time. The cops showed up and searched the place, but they didn't find her. The key card lock was changed on my door, but many families, including mine, left the next day. The whole thing had been insane. Not just the situation, but the girl herself. I have no doubt that I had just witnessed the early stages of a serial killer. Looking back, I'm not sure what was scarier, the girl in my room with a knife craving blood, or that to everyone else besides my dad and I, she seemingly didn't exist. She was a ghost. Either way, that vacation taught me one important lesson that I carry to this day. No matter how much you want it, never give the girl your keycard.
Years ago, I went on a cross-country road trip to visit my folks. The weather was horrible, so it was slow going. Wind and rain lashed the windshield. Traffic accidents snarled my progress. And endless road construction and lane closures seemed to be conspiring against me. All told, I was hours behind schedule. I was exhausted, in need of a bathroom and a shower, so I pulled into a little strip motel off the highway somewhere. It was small and dirty, but it would work in a pinch. At the check-in, which was nothing more than a window on the side of the building, I was greeted by a balding, middle-aged man whose gaze lingered on me an uncomfortably long time. I managed a weary smile and asked for a room. He asked me whether I was traveling alone. I told him it was just me, as I reached into my purse to pull out my ID and credit card. "Sorry, cash only," he said. Red flags were going off at this point, but I scratched together just enough cash, and he tossed me the key. The room was dirty and consisted of nothing more than a rickety bed, an old dresser, and a TV with rabbit ears. The bathroom was worse, a rancid place stinking of puke and decay. I returned to the room, flipping back the worn-out, faded bedspread. The sheets were stained with God knows what. As for the mattress, it was dirty with obvious signs of bedbugs. I sat for a moment at the foot of the bed, watching a cockroach crawl along the floor at my feet. That was the last straw. I got the hell out of there. I decided to make use of the parking lot and get some sleep in the back of my SUV. I pushed the rear seats down to stretch out a bit and pulled some random clothes out of my suitcase to use as a blanket and pillow. It was good enough, and I fell asleep in no time. I woke up sometime later to the sounds of a hushed voice talking. Peering out the side window, I see the motel clerk standing near the door to my room. He appeared to be speaking on a cell phone. I don't see or hear anyone else around. And after a few moments, he hangs up and creeps over to my room. I kept my head low in the car, so he couldn't see me. I watched as he leans his head against the door, listening for any sounds coming from within. Satisfied, he slid the key into the door and enters with a stealth I didn't think he was capable of. He doesn't flip on the lights or anything. He just disappears into the black void. He emerged moments later, cursing under his breath. Just then, another man appeared coming out of the room. I hadn't noticed him going in, so I don't know where he came from. I could only guess the adjoining room or something. They seemed to be arguing, and then the clerk pointed towards my car. I ducked down under the heavy jacket I was using as a blanket and held my breath. I heard their feet crunch on the gravel parking lot. My heart pounded as they tested the doors, their faces inches from the glass. Thankfully, the tinted windows and general mess that was my car hid me from their view. I heard the other man's voice angrily ask the motel clerk where I could be as their footsteps faded into the distance. Cautiously, I peered out. I see the two men walking towards the far side of the lot, talking some more and gesturing across the street where a diner was located. Seizing the moment, I climbed into the driver's seat and started the car. The engine roared to life. Their heads whipped around in shock as I sped out of the lot, leaving the ominous glow of the motel sign behind me as I put an end to whatever this was.
My wife and I got into it. To protect her innocence, I won't bore you with what we were fighting about. It's not important now. It probably wasn't important then. What was more important was that I decided to spend the night at a local hotel and cool off. I didn't have much money, so I picked the cheapest one I could find nearby, the Comfort Inn. It was literally half a mile from my house. I'd throw away less than $100 for it, but I had nowhere else to go. It was fairly early when I got there, around 4 o'clock. A lone woman was manning the front desk who checked me in. She gave me my room key, and I walked to my room. It was decent enough, about what you'd expect. I decided to clear my head and hang out by the outdoor pool for a bit. I seemed to be the only one around. The pool was empty, the halls were empty, even the lobby when I checked in was empty. My room was in the middle of the hall on the second floor. I had no idea why they'd given me that room since it seemed like I was the only one staying in the hotel. After the pool, I laid down on the bed for a bit and flipped on the TV. That's when there was a very light tapping on the door. I waited for someone to yell housekeeping, but they never did, so I just ignored it. I had put the do not disturb sign on the door, so when I heard the beep of the lock and the door slowly opening, I was surprised. I called out, "No, thank you, not right now." The way the bed was positioned, I couldn't see the employee at the door because a wall blocked the view. There was a pause and I repeated myself, growing a bit curious. Suddenly, the door slammed shut really hard, like the person was mad about it or something. The sound startled me so much that I actually got up to check. When I stepped into the hall, I looked to my right. Nobody. I looked to my left, and at the end of the hall, I saw the right leg of a woman turning the corner way down the hall before disappearing. How did she get there so fast, I wondered. I ran down to the end of the hall, and that's when I heard another door closing. When I turned the corner, nobody. Just a row of closed doors. I was so confused and honestly a bit freaked out. I went to the front desk to complain about the rude employee. The woman at the counter said that it must be Anna. She said she would question her about slamming the door. I thanked her, then left the hotel to grab a bite to eat down the street. I got back to my room around 7 p.m. I considered texting my wife but decided to let it go until morning. I sat on the bed, watched a little TV, then turned the light off around 9 o'clock. I woke up to a noise. At first, I didn't know what it was. I rubbed my eyes, sat up, and listened. Then I heard the words,
"I'll kill you."
I suddenly realized a figure was standing at the left edge of my bed, towering over me. I screamed and jerked back away from them. The person then reached down and grabbed me around my throat and started repeating again,
"I'll kill you."
It was an older woman with a weak grip, so I was able to push her off easily. I jumped out of bed and ran to the door. I heard her following me, but she stopped when she got to the door. I ran down the hall to the front desk to tell the clerk. After explaining what happened, she admitted one of the employees lost her master room key. I was furious, of course. The cops were called and they filled out a report. I got a refund for the room, then drove back home for the night. I reconciled with my wife, and the argument earlier that day was seemingly forgotten. I never heard anything more about that woman who attacked me, and I never stayed at a so-called Comfort Inn again. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe.